You know, one of the strangest things I've noticed over the years is how often people confuse talking with doing. They think because they've an anointed a goal, or explained a plan, or told everyone what they're going to do, that somehow the job is already half done. But it's not. Talking is cheap. Talking takes little energy doing. That's where the cost is, that's where the investment is. I've met people who could talk for hours about what they plan to achieve. They'd have the language, the details, the big vision all spelled out. But months later, I'd check in with them and nothing had changed. All that momentum they felt while talking turned out to be nothing but air. It was the illusion of progress without any substance. And life doesn't pay for illusions. It pays for execution. See, words are easy. They make you feel important. They can even get you temporary applause. But here's the danger. If you start to mistake the feeling of talking for the reality of doing, you'll end up broke, disappointed and confused about why life never gave you the rewards you wanted. Because the truth is, life doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to what you do. Mr. Schofield told me early on to not mistake expression for achievement. That was something that always stuck with me. Because I was good at talking, I could explain what I wanted to build, the things I was aiming for. But when he looked me in the eye and said that, it cut right to the heart. Expression doesn't change your bank account. Expression doesn't build a business. It's only action that does. And here's another thing I found. The more someone says, the less they often do. Why? Because talk becomes a substitute for work. The mouth keeps moving, but the hands never get started. It's like a farmer who keeps describing the crop he's going to plant, but never gets around to putting seed in the ground. Season after season passes, and he wonders why there's no harvest. The answer is simple: he mistook talk for planting. So today, that's exactly I want to talk about. How words can either mislead you into complacency or guide you into action. How talking can build illusions, but doing builds results, and most importantly, how to discipline yourself so your actions begin to outweigh your explanations. Because when your doing starts to exceed your saying, that's when life starts to change. You see, there's a strange comfort people find in talking about their goals, their plans, their dreams. They sit down over coffee and spend 2 hours describing what they're going to do. Talking about the big things coming soon. And for that moment they feel accomplished, as if talking about the plan was the same as working the plan. But here's what I've noticed over the years. Words are easy, they cost almost nothing. They don't require sweat, sacrifice, or discipline. Talking creates the illusion of progress without the reality of progress. It's like a farmer standing in a field in springtime, declaring that this year will bring the biggest harvest ever, but never once putting a seed in the ground. When autumn comes, no amount of SPECHES in spring will bring in a harvest. And yet people keep doing it. They get addicted to the feeling of attention, of recognition, of applause. They think because someone nodded in approval or clapped when they shared their idea, that's the same as success. But life doesn't work that way. The applause fades and the scoreboard is still empty. You don't get credit for intention. You only get credit for execution. Now, I'm not saying planning doesn't matter. Planning is valuable, but endless talking about the plan. That's where the trap lies. Talking without action becomes its own comfort zone. It lets you avoid the discomfort of doing, while still feeling like you're making progress. But progress doesn't live in your words, it lives in your calendar, in your habits, in the choices you make when no one's watching. The truth is, most people would rather sound successful than go through the grind of becoming successful. And that's why they stay stuck. They think that talking about the future is enough to guarantee the future. But reality is a stubborn teacher. It pays out in direct proportion to what you plan, what you build, and what you actually finish. So here's the illusion: words feel like motion, but they're not. You can fill a notebook with ideas. You can fill a room with speeches. You can even fill people's ears with promises. But unless something gets built, unless something gets shipped, unless something gets done, nothing changes. And sooner or later, life exposes the difference between talking and doing. You can talk all day long about what you're going to do, but at the end of the day, the marketplace doesn't pay for words. It pays for results, and life works the same way. Nobody gets rewarded for making promises. Rewards come to the ones who follow through, who execute, who take that plan and turn it into something real. See, words create excitement for a moment, but they fade quickly. Action, on the other hand, builds momentum. It may not look impressive at first. A small effort, a quiet step, something nobody notices, but repeated consistently. That action begins to compound. And while the person who just talks is still explaining what they're about to do, the one taking action has already moved ahead. I've seen people who could talk a good game, eloquent, convincing, always planning. But then I've seen others who rarely said much about their goals, yet they went to work, they stayed disciplined. And years later, on the results. The talkers had stories, the doers had proof. And that's the real difference. Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better, because when you get better, when you act, when you improve through effort, you don't have to say much at all. Your results speak for you. They introduce you before you even arrive. That's why action will always outweigh words. Words can fill a room, but only action can fill your life with results. And the good news, you don't need to announce it. Just begin, because when you build with your hands, with your time, with your decisions, you're building something real. And real will always outlast noise. Every time you make a promise, you create a kind of invisible contract. You've just declared to the world that something is gonna happen. And now the clock is ticking. If you follow through, you pay off the contract, and people begin to trust you more. But if you don't, the contract is broken and trust is lost. That's the danger of overpromising. You think it makes you look ambitious, confident, maybe even inspiring. But in reality, it's digging a hole for you to climb out of. You're borrowing credibility from your future. And if you don't deliver, you'll be left with debt. Not financial debt, but credibility debt. And credibility debt is even harder to pay back. On the other hand, when you keep quiet and just do the work, something remarkable happens. No one is holding you to an inflated promise. No one is waiting for the big reveal. And when you finally produce results, people are surprised, impressed, and far or inclined to trust you. That's the beauty of underpromising. and over delivering. You set the bar low or sometimes don't set it at all. And then you exceed it the result. Trust compounds influence GROWS. Your words CARIS weight. This is the very opposite of what happens to the person who always talks about what they're going to do. The more they say, the less they do. And the less people believe them. Their PROMICS become background noise. But when you build a pattern of delivering quietly, consistently, even modestly, your reputation begins to speak for itself. And when your reputation speaks, you don't have to say nearly as much. That's why the key is not in trying to look impressive, but in being reliable. Small wins stack up. Quiet progress becomes visible over time. And soon, without saying a word, you've built something far more valuable than PROMICS. You've built trust. And trust is what opens doors that talking alone never will. Credibility is like a bank account. You can spend years making steady deposits, and yet with one careless withdrawal, you can empty it overnight. Every time you follow through on what you said you would do, you make a deposit. Every time you promise but don't deliver, you make a withdrawal. And the danger is most people are so busy talking, they don't realize they're draining their account faster than they're filling it. You've seen it before. Someone comes into the room full of energy and an OUNCNG, plans, goals, and big declarations. Everyone nods, maybe even claps. But deep down they're thinking, let's see if he actually follows through. Because people don't remember what you said nearly as much as they remember what you did. Talk FADS action sticks. Now it's not that words don't matter. They do. But words without action don't add up to credibility. They subtract from it. And when that subtraction happens too often, people stop listening. They might smile politely when you speak, but inside they've already discounted it. Because the track record says otherwise. Credibility is built quietly. It doesn't announce itself. It's built every time you show up on time. Every time you keep a commitment. Every time you meet a deadline. Even when it's inconvenient. Every time you produce results. Without the need for a drum roll. That's what builds a reputation that lasts. Think of someone you admire. Someone you trust. Chances are, you don't admire them because of how much they said. You admire them because of how much they've done and how consistent they've been at doing it. Trust doesn't come from SPECHES. It comes from steady proof. And here's the truth. Credibility takes years to build and seconds to destroy. Which is why you have to guard IT carefully. Protect IT like it's treasure. Because in many ways it is. Once credibility's gone, you can't just talk your way back into it. You have to rebuild IT brick by brick. Action by action, and that's a slow process. So here's the better strategy. And let your actions be many. That way when you do speak, people know to pay attention. Because you've earned their trust by showing them, over and over again, that you do what you say. Silence is one of those disciplines. Most people underestimate. Everyone is quick to speak, eager to jump in, ready to share their opinion. But what I've learned is this. Sometimes the most persuasive person in the room is the one who says the least. See, when you hold back, when you practice restraint, your words carry more weight. People start leaning in to hear what you'll say. Because they know you don't just talk to fill the air. You talk when it matters. That's how you gain influence. By making every word count. I remember years ago being in a meeting where one man spoke endlessly. He had something to say about everything. But when it was all over, nobody could remember a single sentence he said. Then another man. He only spoke once. Just one thought delivered with clarity. And that was the only thing anyone remembered. Walking out of the room. That's the leverage of restraint. It's not about being silent forever. It's about using silence as a tool. If you're always speaking, always explaining, always defending, then your words lose their impact. But when you learn to hold back, you create space. And in that space, your actions stand taller. Your presence carries more weight. Think about it. Discipline in speech, MIRORS discipline in life. If you can discipline your words, you can discipline your time, your habits, your money. It's all connected. Because if you can't control what comes out of your mouth, how are you gonna control the direction of your life? So remember, this restraint is not weakness. It's strength under control. And when you combine that with action, you don't just create noise. You create influence. The less you say, the more people listen, and when they listen, you gain something much greater than attention. You gain trust. The truth is, words are easy. They don't cost much to produce. You can stack up 100 of them in a hurry. But without discipline, they mean very little. It's action that carries the weight. And when you allow your words to run loose, without restraint, without follow-through, you cheapen their value. I've seen people talk themselves out of opportunities simply because they couldn't stop talking. They RVLED too much, PRMSED too much, or made COMMITMENTS their actions couldn't support. And the result? Their credibility dropped. It's not that they were bad people. It's just that their words outpace their deeds. And when that happens, the world starts to doubt you. One of the best lessons I ever learned was to understate, to let results do the talking. If you're working on a project, don't spend hours telling everybody how big it's going to be. Show them the outcome. If you're making changes in your life, don't announce it to the world every day. Let your improved results become the evidence. Because once results are visible, you don't need to convince anyone, they see it. There's something refreshing about a person who doesn't have to keep explaining themselves. They just move steadily, quietly, and then suddenly, there it is, the promotion, the new business, the stronger RELATIONSHIPS, the financial breakthrough. And then when people ask how you did it, that's when your words have the most impact. After your results have given them a stage to stand on. So the principle here is simple. The less you speak about what you're going to do, the more freedom you give yourself to actually do it. When you promise less, you relieve the pressure of appearances. And when you follow through with action, your influence and respect grow naturally. Not from what you said, but from what you proved. And once you live this way for a while, you'll notice something important. You don't even feel the urge to over-explain or oversell anymore. You become comfortable letting silence speak for you. Because you know your actions are carrying the message. And that kind of confidence can't be faked, it's built.